Welcome back. Another Instant Analysis. I'm Riley Sager. He's Connor Morrissette. Day 8 of spring practice. Connor, we got to talk to some members of the defense, Coach Riley after, but first, what did you see on the field?
Today, a lot of stuff was going on. When we got to campus, members of Premium Sports, that 7-on-7 travel team, they were here. A lot of guys were here. A lot of recruits from that organization were here, so it was fun to see them interact with some of the players at USC, some of the coaches, and just a lot of recruits on campus today. Isun Tafa, the offensive lineman from, I believe, Utah, was here, 4-star kid. He's really talented. We saw Deshaun Rado, who I'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit. A lot of really talented recruits. Jacob Whitehead was here, who's a 2027 corner from St. John Bosco. Caden Dixon-Wyatt from Mater Dei, who USC really wants to try to get to commit at some point. So, as has been the case all spring, Riley, we saw a lot of top recruits at practice. And then as for what I saw today, so Makai Lemon is back in pads. He looks fully healthy. I don't know if he's competing fully in the 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 work, but the fact that he was in pads was significant. He has not been in pads. Well, maybe he has been in pads, but he hasn't really been going full go, and he was going full go when we were able to watch today. So Deshaun Rado, the running back commit, he was following Anthony Jones all around practice. He was with him over when some of the running backs were catching passes early on in practice, some of the guys stretching out, and then he followed him over to the punt return and kick return players, and Rideau was getting right into the mix. It looked like he almost wanted to catch a couple at one point. He was right in there. It was good to see him fitting in. He has a good relationship with DJ Jordan, the receiver from Sierra Canyon, two guys who played high school football in up north in the northern part of Los Angeles, Westlake Village for Rideau, and then Chatsworth for Jordan. What else do I have here? Jakeem Stewart was with the defensive ends, so he's been switching all around. We've seen him with the interior guys today with the defensive ends. Lincoln Riley watched the running backs, receivers, and tight ends warming up and catching passes closely, following what happened with Jacobe Lane on Tuesday where he was yelling at one of the quarterbacks. So I don't know if that was connected, but Riley was watching that like a hawk more than we've seen. And then John McDonald, the new offensive analyst, we expected him to work with the offensive line. We've seen him do a lot of that so far, helping out Zach Hansen, a younger coach who doesn't have a ton of experience as an offensive line coach. He was the tight ends coach at USC before, but McDonald's been at LSU, Notre Dame, Washington State. He's coached all over the place. He's an older guy, and that steady veteran presence, I think, will help the offensive linemen.
Yeah, it was great to see Deshaun Rado out there, running backs. Someone asked Coach Riley after practice, what position group are you most excited for, most impressed by? And he said running backs. It was tough losing Woody Marks, Quentin Joyner last season, not having them now. But how is USC replenishing? Any insights on that?
Well, when Lincoln Riley said that, I was like, okay, that's amazing, because when Ryan and I did a podcast like 2 months ago, I said the biggest thing I'm the most excited for are the running backs. So that made me feel really good that Riley feels the same way right now. So Wayman Jordan, the transfer from the junior college ranks, he looks to be fitting in really well. A grinder, a guy who wants to work harder on catching passes. Eli Sanders, the New Mexico transfer, he was a 1,000-yard rusher last season. I think USC, as we've talked about in this instant analysis videos before, like that they want to use him all over the place, maybe replace some of what Zachariah Branch brought last season. I know they're different positions, but he's that speedster. And then Brian Jackson, he's really embraced this competition, and he might be the RB2 right now, and he is still pushing for that RB1 spot. I think right now Wayman Jordan probably has that locked down, but we can't see a ton of practice, so I can't say that with 100% certainty. Brian Jackson, though, is certainly in the mix, and I think he'll have a good year. Expect USC to go with 3 running backs, more so than they have previously, because Riley's first year we saw a little bit of Raleigh Brown as that third guy. I think whoever the third one is this year is going to play more than we've seen guys play at USC under Riley. I just think that's the way the offense is tailored. They're going to want to use some of these guys because they're better offensive players.
Yeah, for sure. We also talked to Jade Abasiri afterward. He said just the fierceness between the two lines, offensive, defense, in practice. They kind of rally each other up. They get each other going. Just it's a battle every day between them. Also, Marcellus Williams, cornerback, he said, he's always had confidence, but even having a great spring and fall last year, didn't play. So now it's just about taking that year under his belt to develop, to have the mindset going into it. Anything else you heard from the guys afterward?
I had 2 great scrums, but quickly on Marcellus Williams, Lincoln Riley was asked, is he fitting into the cornerback competition? And Riley said, without a doubt, absolutely. So the three names that I keep hearing at those cornerback spots, DeCarlos Nicholson, who I talked to, I can get to him in a second, DJ Harvey, the transfer from San Jose State, and then Marcellus Williams. I don't know if he's the third guy. He might even be the second guy in there right now. But those three, I think, are going to play a lot. We'll see what USC does in the portal. If they add another cornerback, that could potentially shake up the mix. But Marcellus Williams, he's firmly in there. Riley talked about how last season he had a really good spring, Williams did, and then some other guys maybe not necessarily beat him out, but he just, I don't want to say got lost in the shuffle. He just needed to work on some things. So he got off to a great start, but then he bulked up and he learned the playbook, and now as a second-year guy, I think he's really in the mix, and that's what Riley talked about. So as for Elijah Newby, we heard from him for the first time in his USC career. Remember, he was a linebacker last year. Now he's moved over to edge rusher. And another thing that made me feel really good, they have Cameron Fountain, they have Jakeem Stewart, they have Anthony Lucas, a lot of bigger edge rushers in that room, and Eli Newby, he's going to be that speed edge rusher. That's how he fits into the mix. That's why they moved him from linebacker to defensive end. They didn't really have that speedy component. Of course, some of those bigger guys are fast too, but Newby's best trait is his speed. That's how he can get on the field potentially here in his second season, and I felt like USC lacked that. So the fact that they did a self-scout and they moved him, I hope he can play and get in and impact situations, because I do feel like they need that speedy edge rusher. So he seemed really excited. He was a great interview. I really recommend checking him out. He's trying to gain a little weight, and he also talked about how Jakeem Stewart's really impressing him. I also heard from DeCarlos Nicholson, and he gave a really honest answer about why he entered the transfer portal for it might have only been one day, it might have been 3 days. It was very short in the offseason, then he decided to come back to USC. He just said, I overthought it. Yeah. I just thought too much, and maybe he didn't get the best advice, and I'm glad cooler heads prevailed and he ended up returning, because he has a chance to be the starting cornerback on this team, playing a huge role with all the guys USC lost. That one was kind of a head-scratcher at the time, and now he's back, and he really seems to be enjoying things. Second year with D'Anton Lynn, I think he's going to have a huge role, so that was really interesting to hear him talk about that. He was ecstatic when that junior college ruling came down, when Diego Pavia sued in whatever court he sued in, the Vanderbilt quarterback, to get his junior college years back in for Division I eligibility. So Nicholson did the same thing, and he was so happy to get that extra year. And another year on defense with D'Anton Lynn, like I said, was something that stood out to him. I have a couple other quick thoughts on Lincoln Riley here, Riley, but if there's anything you want to respond to, by all means.
No, I think it's great that we've had new guys to talk to every day. There's, we are 8 days in, and so the guys are getting in the rhythm of things, but it's also nice to have fresh faces, just getting different perspectives on how things are going so far and what they're doing to develop, not just how the off season went, but also, a lot can happen in the past 3-4 weeks that we've had so far. So I'm excited to see how the rest of practices shake out, but still, it's fun. People are doing different positions. We saw Justin Tanu on Tuesday playing some right tackle after, usually left. Yep. So you don't know what to expect all the time. It's just fun to keep us on our toes.
Yeah, spring practice is really fun. You get a chance to get a little sneak peek at the season. Another guy who switched positions, I'm going to try really hard not to butcher his name, Radumana Babalabuvu. That might be wrong, but he switched from defensive line to offensive line. Lincoln Riley said that's not a 100% position switch right now. We just wanted to try him out, so we'll see what the future holds for Mana there. And then a few other things Riley talked about, Jacobe Lane and just his maturity and how Riley really feels like Jacoby's taking some steps forward. And credit to Lincoln Riley. He gave a lot of really good insights into Jacobe Lane, because last season we saw Jacobe Lane have some highs. That Notre Dame game at the end, of course, the bowl game, he was tremendous how he ended the season. Then he had some lows where he just didn't play a lot of snaps. He would get frustrated, and just trying to bring out his best self is something that not only Lincoln Riley's working with him on, but Riley talked about how everyone in the building has a relationship with this guy, and they're really trying to have him put his best foot forward. I definitely recommend listening to Riley's comments about Lane, because I did think they provided an insight into the program that we don't really get a lot of the time. So that stood out to me. I'm going to write a story about that if you'd prefer to read than to watch. He said Prophet Brown, and then he mentioned Kamari Ramsey potentially playing some nickel. I don't know how much we'll see Ramsey play nickel. That just, to me, made me think they don't really have a lot of depth there, so some of the younger guys are also playing at nickel, but that looks like Prophet Brown's spot to lose, and I do think they'll add someone from the portal who has nickel experience that will be able to work into that competition. And then, Marcellus Williams being firmly in the QB or the CB competition, and then, Riley was very high on the running backs, which we talked about. So action-packed day, a ton of stuff on campus today. This was a fun day, Riley. It was good to be here.
Yeah, I think it's great that Coach Riley is giving Jacobe Lane that opportunity to step up, to be kind of one of the veteran guys, to share his experience. He said he needs to be mature for this team, for his teammates. So I'm glad that Coach Riley is giving him the opportunity to do that, kind of not necessarily pressure, but just saying, this is your spot, this is your chance to really be a leader for this team.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he challenged Lane, because I think Lane is doing a lot of the right things, but the consistency piece and being a leader, that's what they're looking for. We all know the talent is there. It's tremendous. I think it's fair to say last year the thing that held Lane back at times was himself. And so they're trying to coach that out of him. And whether that's football, whether that's off the field, that's where he's trying to get better. And Riley said Jacobe Lane is doing things right now at the highest level that he's ever done in his USC career. So breakout season incoming? I hope so. I mean, 12 touchdowns last season. That was a pretty damn good breakout year. But the consistency piece, if he can get to 12 touchdowns again, that would be great. But I think he was under 600 receiving yards. You can get to close to 1,000, replicate that touchdown production. Not only will he be the best receiver on the team potentially, but one of the best in the country. So very bright future for him. Very excited to watch him. And, yeah, Riley gave some really interesting insight into just what's going on there with Jacobe Lane.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to from Lane. Anything else for spring practice? Couple more weeks left, Connor?
Yeah, a couple more weeks. Remember, no spring games. So, unfortunately, if you're a fan, you won't be able to watch the spring game this year. Lincoln Riley did talk about how they're going to try to do something to get the fans involved. I don't know if that's going to be more before the season or here at the end of spring. I'm kind of anxiously waiting for that, because I do think the spring game is a good way to connect with fans. So if we hear more on that, we can let you know for sure. But that's about it for me today.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully something to get the fans involved. But that's going to be all for today, day 8 of spring practice. This was Instant Analysis, Riley Sager and Connor Morrissette.